The League of Women Voters is a grassroots, nonprofit education and advocacy organization. We conduct voter registration drives and candidate forums like this one. The League is nonpartisan. We never endorse a particular candidate or party. We welcome new members, volunteers, and donors, both men and women. Our co-sponsor, the East Bay Media Group, publishes newspapers throughout the East Bay. Our moderator tonight is Christy Nedelin from the East Bay Media Group. And our host recording is Matt Hayes, also from the East Bay Media Group. There will be 2 debates during this forum. The first debate is between Walter Felag Jr. and Mark Smiley for Senate District 10. The second debate, scheduled to begin later at 7:15, is between June Speakman and William Hunt for House District 68. A third forum that was scheduled for District 69 between Donovan and Ann Costa had to be canceled because Ann Costa stated she was unable to participate. The candidates have had their names drawn to determine their speaking position, and for the first debate, Mark Smiley will be going first and Walter will be second, but each will have a chance to go first because we rotate the questions. The moderator will ask 6 to 8 questions. These questions have been submitted by the public, the candidates, and co-sponsors via email and phone, and then chosen by the moderator. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question, and the other candidate will have the same amount of time to respond to that question. If any candidate wishes to comment further, he or she can be recognized by the moderator and use one of 7 comment cards. They are 30 seconds each. I forgot to mention that each candidate will have a minute in the beginning to introduce themselves. The timing of this forum is being done by League members Nancy and Greg Fritz. When a speaker has 15 seconds left, the timers will hold up a sign, and when their time is up, they will wave a red sign. Tell them to stop. When the speaker sees the red sign, he or she can finish their sentence, but when another sentence is started, they will be charged a comment card. Joanne DeVoe will be keeping track of how many comment cards are being used. And my name is Linda Poole, and now I will turn this over to our moderator, Christy Nadlin. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And for the audience at home, we appreciate you watching tonight's candidate forum. And just so you know, you are muted and we can't see you, so feel free to make yourselves comfortable and enjoy the evening. We're going to start with Mr. Smiley, and he has 1 minute for his opening statement.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you to the League of Women Voters here in Rhode Island for putting this together. Welcome, Senator Felag. How are you doing?
Very good.
I've been married to Andrea for 25 years. We've lived in Warren the second time around for 19 years. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and I am the past chairman of the Rhode Island Republican Party. I have been involved in Warren Republican politics since 2008. I'm a social member of Engine 5 here in Warren, and I served 6 years at the zoning board here in Warren. Professionally, I am a retirement insurance professional. I got into this race mostly to bring more balance to the State House. The State House is a highly partisan organization or operation up there. And we just, the most important thing that can happen is there be more balance at the State House. Thank you.
Mr. Felag, you now have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Good evening and congratulations to the League for sponsoring this event. My name is Walter S. Felag Jr. I've been a state senator for a number of years. Prior to that, I was on the Warren Town Council and the Warren Town Council president. I have raised 2 boys in the town of Warren as a lifetime resident, Jake and Zeke. Professionally, I am a senior systems engineer for C Corp in Middletown, Rhode Island. And my wife and I own a small business called Feminine Fancies in Barrington, Rhode Island. So we know the hardships that the COVID pandemic has brought to not only our businesses, but also in other small businesses. I am the Vice Chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, and I'm also the Chairman of the Special Legislation and Veterans Affairs Committee. I don't know how much time I have, but I don't see anything, so I guess I can keep going. I think the most important issue during this campaign is that I have experience and I have demonstrated leadership, integrity, and a willingness to listen and learn from my constituents. I don't have all the answers, but I certainly do listen to my constituents and respond to their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll start with the questions. Mr. Smiley, you'll go first. If elected, what would be your top 3 priorities for the coming legislative session?
I want to open a discussion about school choice in this area. We experimented with it with the Pathways program, and that's actually worked out pretty well. But I want to open that up to all students, allow them the opportunity that if their school is lacking, they can move. They can go to a different school and the money would follow them. Again, I'm in the race to bring a better balance to the State House. And by doing so, more balance will actually make the government work in our favor much better. And let me see. About the Constitution, I want to make sure we fund our first responders, all of them. Pulling funding from them is not a good idea at all. And 15 seconds. So a lot of pressure here, you know. That's it. That's fine. Thank you.
Great. Mr. Felag, same question. Not if elected, for the next legislative session, what would be your top 3 priorities?
Well, the number 1 priority has to be the budget, because the budget has to reflect the needs of the people within the state of Rhode Island. It has to be balanced naturally. We have to continue to eliminate the car tax. We have to provide safety nets for our seniors and the disabled. So that's the number 1 issue I would be working on. The second issue, obviously, is prompt constituent service. I get a lot of phone calls over the past 18 months. I received over 1,200 individual emails, phone calls, or constituents coming up to me walking around town with individual dilemmas. And I've been able to resolve a lot of those and be able to respond to those. I think that's very important, is constituent service. The third thing would be to be able to make myself accessible, because the most important thing a state senator has to do is reflect the values of the towns, be available and be able to assist our communities, and also to be able to assist those individuals who need help in state agencies. So I have those experiences and I have those phone numbers to contact those individuals. Thank you.
Mr. Smiley, did you want to use a rebuttal card?
Yes, I would. The first question that I have, well, it's not a question, it's a statement. This year, we are facing a $900 million plus budget hole. And to combat that, the state legislature has actually punted the football from 2020. We're running off of 2020's budget, and they're not going to get together or even start talking about it until after the election in January. That is not leadership. That is just staying in a hole and hiding. The hope is that Joe Biden will win, so they'll be able to use the CARES money that was earmarked for our small businesses to plug up holes.
Thank you. Just so you know, I was trying to time that, but I can't see the time. So if anybody can do your best to keep track of time, I'm trying to do it too here. Did you want to use that one, Mr. Felag?
Yes, I'd like to rebut that statement. The Senate has met as a body 4 different times during the COVID pandemic. But more importantly, as a member of the Finance Committee, we have met 10 times since March. In fact, we met last week for 2.5 hours. One of the times we met was for 4.5 hours. So the Senate has been doing their due diligence in terms of meeting and responding not only to constituents' concerns. As I stated previously, since the pandemic, I have responded to 450 constituent either emails, phone calls, or prompt visits on the streets of Warren, Bristol, and Tiverton.
Thank you, Mr. Felag. I'm counting that as 2, actually. If we could get the timer back up, that would be great.
Yeah, I can't see the timer, unfortunately.
No, I cannot either at this point. For the next question, Mr. Felag, we'll start with you.
Yes.
Do you think that we in Rhode Island are doing everything we can to contain COVID-19? If not, what additional measures do you believe should be done to contain the virus?
Let me first state by saying I think the governor has done a very good job of addressing this issue. We have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to wear a mask, we have to social distance, we have to wash our hands, we have to do all the things that are prescribed by the Department of Health. As far as small businesses are concerned, I think we need to do a better job with the small businesses. As a small business owner, I know for sure that we faced a lot of hardships in terms of trying to figure out and fill out the PPP form, but more importantly, the state form that allowed only 15,000 per business. In our case, it was only 4,500. We need to do a better job, and I'm glad to see that the governor said that she would double that amount, but we need to focus more on our small businesses. So thank you.
Thank you.
If you could raise your hand, maybe when we get to a minute or something.
I'll raise it. Do we raise it to 15 seconds? 15 seconds before either a minute, or if it's a rebuttal, I'll raise it at 15 seconds.
Okay.
At the end of that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so, Mr. Smiley, same question. Do you think we in Rhode Island are doing everything we can to contain COVID-19? If not, what additional measures do you believe should be done to contain the virus?
No, I don't think that we've done everything that we can to contain COVID-19. We needed to focus in on the elderly and the infirm. I don't see that as having happened. This idea that we would keep COVID-19 senior citizens in their nursing home when they came down with COVID-19 was like, storing a lit match inside of a gasoline container. That's where the vast majority of the deaths from COVID-19 have happened. That should have been addressed entirely different, and it doesn't seem to be being addressed going forward either. Of course, my biggest problem is the way we've treated small businesses here in Rhode Island. People are just scrambling, trying to save their life savings. They've put everything that they had into these businesses, and they're losing everything. Hopefully we can get back to work quickly.
Great. And I'll just pause for a second for a little technical. Matt told me to put on gallery view, which allows us to see more people. If you put it on gallery view, you can see Nancy and Greg Fritz doing the timing. See, now
Okay.
stop.
All right, good.
So yeah, so great. Now we're all hopefully on the same page. Awesome.
So I'm up to, excuse me, I'm up to 3 or 2. I thought you said that was 2.
You've spent
3. Okay.
for extra, and
Okay.
Mr. Smiley spent 1. And any rebuttals or more comment on the COVID question, or should we go on?
No, I think they got me down for 3. Is that 3 correct?
Oh, okay, then 3 perhaps.
And
So
Mr. Smiley doesn't have any,
he has
They don't
1.
have me down for any.
but they didn't put him down for any. That's why
I
I
had
went on track.
1.
There you go.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank
there
you.
we go. Okay, third question for Mr. Smiley. How should economic development funds be used to attract new businesses and support existing ones without undue risk to taxpayers?
Well, you can't undo risks and spend taxpayers' money. It's not going to happen, but we should be loaning money out instead of these 38 studio-like grants that are being sent out. We're putting too many eggs into one basket. So we need to actually expand, helping our already successful businesses expand to get more entrepreneurs interested in opening a business in Rhode Island. We need to come off of the regulation. We've got to stop doing so much regulation that it's just impossible to get through the system. I would also advocate for a concierge system be put in place at the State House for a new business coming in, just to sit there and circumnavigate the bureaucracy that is the state and the local communities. And it would be a service that we would pay for out of taxpayers' money. I'm almost out of time, so I'll stop there.
Mr. Felag, same question. How should economic development funds be used to attract new businesses and support existing ones without undue risk to taxpayers?
Well, I mean, the focal point here is that our budget is predicated on the income tax and the sales tax. $1.4 billion we receive a year in income tax, and the sales tax $1.2 billion. So we need to focus on generating more income taxes and more sales tax, and that can be by improving the business climate. How do we do that? We need to attract more businesses down in Quonset Point. We need to have Commerce RI go to different businesses and seek how we can improve and expand those individual businesses. It's important that we set up these economic zones or enterprise zones that would bring more businesses into the state of Rhode Island. And that way we can increase our business and become a state that's welcoming to business.
Thank you. Anyone want to add anything, or should we go on? All right. So the next question will go to Mr. Felag first. Do you support the governor's green energy plan to have 100% renewable energy by the end of the decade? And what legislation would you propose that would help support it or serve as an alternative?
Well, we have to look at climate change as an issue. And during that time, the legislature has stated that it wants to reduce its emphasis on carbon dioxide and has worked diligently to reduce that. And so I agree with the governor in this proposal. We have also been the first to put up windmills. I think it's important that we expand our solar panels, and all these can contribute to addressing the greenhouse or the climate change initiative. We saw the weather changes that are taking place in California, the issues in Louisiana, and it's imperative that we in Rhode Island start that dialogue and start that aspect of listening to our professors who are saying that climate change is real.
Okay, Mr. Smiley, do you support the governor's green energy plan to have 100% renewable energy by the end of the decade? And what legislation would you propose that would help support it or serve as an alternative?
Well, I think the only way that you can get to that is by getting the Canadian hydroelectric into the state. And so the first thing that we would need to do is address the roadblocks to doing that. Our neighboring states are not particularly all that fond of us getting that electricity. However, they do themselves. I don't know that we can, as small as Rhode Island is, that we can ever get to the point where we're 100% renewable energy without that Canadian hydroelectric. So that would be the first priority for me, is to address ways of getting the Canadian hydroelectric into the state. Continuing on with more windmills and solar panels, I don't know if we would actually have to cover the entire state in solar panels to be able to get to the point where we have actually become energy independent with renewable sources only, and they have to be inside of the state. I just don't see that happening, but you tap into hydroelectric out of Canada, we can get there from here.
Thank you. So the next question for Mr. Smiley. Since the murder of George Floyd, there have been sustained protests and discussions about reforming the police, shifting funds to mental health, and abolishing the limited immunity for police. What reforms do you support, if any?
Well, I would certainly like to see us put more money into mental health. That is a part of this that we have left go since the mid 80s. And we were relying on federal funds to do it, and the federal government walked away from that, and Rhode Island was expected to pick up the ball and go, and they didn't. And they're not alone. They're not the only state that didn't. But that's the most important piece of the whole discussion, is getting more money into supporting mental health issues. Defunding the police, absolutely not. That just can't be. If you have some social program that you want to improve this or improve that, you can't steal it out of the police budget. A limited immunity, that's kind of tough, because, of course, that's a tough job. I was a military policeman. I understand the strife that they're under, and how much pressure that you can be in a dangerous situation like that. And I don't know if we can pull the funding from the police. We need to continue to train them.
Thank you. Mr. Felag, since the murder of George Floyd, there have been sustained protests and discussions about reforming the police, shifting funds to mental health, and abolishing the limited immunity for police. What reforms do you support, if any?
Well, obviously, I believe our police do an excellent job overall. There's always room for improvement, and I'm glad to see that the police chiefs sign on to the 2020 pledge and also initiated training programs. I agree with Mr. Smiley relative to the mental health aspect. We're asking so much of our police department nowadays. We're asking them to get involved in domestic violence, drug overdose, cyberbullying, schooling, fraud, identity fraud, and all these other things. But one of the most important things is, because of COVID, we're going to start to experience a lot of mental health issues. And I believe it's important and imperative that I know now they have a BH Link aspect to their training, such that they can bring in professionals or advise those individuals in those circumstances to go seek help from BH Link and address their concerns, as long as state agencies.
Thank you. Mr. Felag, the next question's for you. Given that so many people lose their health insurance when they lose their jobs, is it time to provide healthcare insurance that is not dependent on employers? Why or why not?
Yes. The most important thing we need is health insurance. And that's why I'm very concerned about the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, to ensure that we have that agency available for pre-existing conditions, and also for those individuals that are 26 years old and under. That being said, yes, right now we have COBRA, but COBRA is very expensive. If you use your job, it could be $600-700 a month just to have health insurance. So I believe it's imperative that we as a nation should provide health insurance to all individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Smiley, given that so many people lose their health insurance when they lose their jobs, is it time to provide health care insurance that is not dependent on employers? Why or why not?
Well, for starters, the health insurance being from the employers was a way for employers to compete back in the 40s during World War II to attract workers there. And that's how it got coupled in the first place. Is it a tool to compete for workers? Now, do I believe that we need Medicaid for all or Medicare for all or something like that? I work in the Medicare field, and it's not a perfect system. It's not everything that everybody thinks it's cracked up to be. However, we do need to address individual ownership of your insurance policy, and there should be some sort of ramification if you don't choose to participate in the system. Currently with Medicare, there are penalties if you don't participate in the system while you're still healthy, and then turn around and try to jump in once you get sick. That doesn't work well, and you need to be participating throughout your entire life.
Thank you very much. Mr. Smiley, under current rules adopted by each chamber, leadership can control whether or not legislation is brought to the floor for consideration. Would you support changes to Senate rules to allow more bills with popular support to be voted on? And how can the process be made more democratic?
Well, as I've mentioned before, the easiest way to get it more democratic is to get more of the opposition party up there. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where we're the majority, but if the Senate needed Republicans to pass anything, it would change the whole dynamic up there at the State House. So that's a major problem. And yes, I would support any sort of rules change that would allow people's ideas to come forward regardless of party. So that's not the case today. In many cases, a bill brought forth by a Republican will be ignored until suddenly it appears with a Democrat's name on it, if it's a really good idea. And many of the Republicans up there say, okay, well, as long as the idea goes forward, I don't care who gets credit for it. However, that's not quite fair. And yes, absolutely, I'd change the rules to allow bills to get to the floor easier.
Thank you. And Mr. Felag, under current rules adopted by each chamber, leadership can control whether or not legislation is brought to the floor for consideration. Would you support changes to Senate rules to allow more bills with popular support to be voted on? And how can the process be made more democratic?
Yes, I agree. I have no problem with that. Basically, we have a number of bills. Each year, we probably have around 2,400 bills. The House has around 1,300. The Senate has about 1,100 bills. Those bills are heard in committee, and then from the committee process brought to the floor. You're saying if it's a popular bill and it has a lot of people behind that particular bill, then obviously it should be brought to the floor. Whether it's a Republican bill or a Democratic bill, I work well with both sides, and usually a lot of our bills are voted on unanimously, or a majority of people support it. And that's because we allow everyone an opportunity to modify the bill and bring it to fruition in the Senate chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. The eighth question is for you, Mr. Felag. Estate taxes cause many moderate and higher income Rhode Islanders to move away when they reach retirement age. What could be done to the estate tax to make it more attractive for these taxpayers to remain here? What would be the effect on the state budget?
That's a good question, is what the effect is. The effect is probably around $30 million, $30 to $40 million. It's not that a great amount of money. But what I can say is probably around 5 years ago, we passed a bill that stated that the estate tax would go up to $1.5 million and be escalated by a CPI, and it would have no cliff. Previous to that, it had the cliff, which meant that if it was originally before maybe 800 million and you got to 801 million was your estate, you were taxed on the whole amount, the 801. Now with the cliff, what happens is that it's $1.5 billion and you're free of taxes on the 1.5, and then you pay the differential. With the CPI right now, it's at $1.58 billion is the threshold before you get taxed on those particular things. And I would be in favor of increasing it. I've submitted legislation to that effect previously.
Thank you. And Mr. Smiley, state taxes cause many moderate and higher income Rhode Islanders to move away when they reach retirement age. What could be done to the estate tax to make it more attractive for these taxpayers to remain here? What would be the effect on the state budget?
The first problem that I see with the estate tax is that in often cases, we are taxing money that has already been taxed. Most people's wealth came to them after they paid the legal amount of tax on that. And that's what we need to get away from, is double taxation. Here, I would say that there's probably some of that money that has been sitting in capital gains and has never been recognized. That should be brought forward and they should pay the tax on that. But the money that's already been taxed should be left alone. What would be the ramifications to the budget? The first thing I have to say about the budget, well, I guess I've already said some things about the budget, but we have a spending problem in Rhode Island. We don't necessarily have a revenue problem. We need to take a look at getting more out of our government for less money and not the opposite. We shouldn't be trying to always expand revenue because, of course, our government is running as efficiently as absolutely possible. That's not the case. So we need to get into our government and really take a good hard look at making cuts there, something that just doesn't seem to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a bit of time left, so I'm going to ask a bonus question.
Oh, thanks.
We'll start with Mr. Smiley. Why are you a better candidate for this office than your opponent?
Well, my opponent is one of the most likable guys on the planet. I've told many people that. The only problem that I have with him is that he is a solid Democrat vote in a majority that is so much of a majority at the State House that it no longer even has to follow its own rules. Case in point is the Joint Commission on Legislative Services. It's a group of the majority leaders and the minority leaders, plus the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, get together and decide on how to spend the $75+ million that they spend in the State House operations. That group hasn't met in over 10 years. Why? Because there's just no particular reason. The Speaker of the House just does whatever he wants to do, and nobody's standing in the way. If there were more Republicans up there, that could be called out a lot easier. And that's the biggest reason why I need to be in this race, is to just bring up one more Republican.
Thank you. Mr. Felag, why are you a better candidate for this office than your opponent?
Well, I like to go on my experience. I'm running as my experience as being a person who has demonstrated leadership, integrity, and it has the ability to listen and respond and learn from my constituents. I professionally work as a senior systems engineer, and so I attack the individual problems. I look at it as finding plausible and practical solutions to complex issues. So I like working with the numbers, working with the budget, and I have firsthand knowledge of the pandemic in terms of my wife's small business. We've lost money because of the pandemic, and we've been able to try to work through those different things. But I have that experience. So I have experience working with government, working on the town council as I had for a number of years. So I understand the issues that small councils encounter, and then be able to bring those concerns to the State House.
Thank you very much. Now it's time for closing statements, and you each get a minute, but you also can use your leftover 30-second rebuttal times. So we'll start with Mr. Smiley. He can use as much as 4 minutes total.
Oh, wow. Well, again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for having done this together, brought this together. I've appreciated it. This has been a very difficult time to run for office. Not too many people are answering the doors when I knock on them. And I don't think there's any way they could possibly know why I was at the front door. So I don't think they're just trying to ignore me, but they are scared. And so what I would like to do is just put forward one more time that this race is about bringing more of a balance at the State House, and thereby being able to force the State House into doing the work that it's supposed to be doing. I'll give an example of both the Senate and the House have an oversight committee. That oversight committee's responsibility is to ask the administration questions, and they haven't been meeting on a regular basis during this entire COVID at all, during COVID-19. So reality is that questions such as the new one today was break rooms have to be closed at small businesses. There wasn't much basis for that. There wasn't much explanation as to why we were doing that. It's actually the House and the Senate's oversight committees that are supposed to be answering those questions or asking the questions to get it out into the public when something like that comes up. Because no one that I've talked to can figure out what the difference is with a break room or not a break room. In reality, if our teachers and students can be at work, then how is it that the break rooms are such a big problem? You know, there's no one answering those questions. And there may be a perfectly valid reason to do it, but the governor is not being forced to tell us why she's doing such a thing. And that would be one of the reasons, that would be one of the things that would happen more frequently if there was more of a Republican presence up at the State House. Overall, this has been an enjoyable process, but may not have picked the proper year to run for office, but I did that well before COVID-19 became an issue. So anyway, I've enjoyed myself. I want to thank the League of Women Voters once again, and thank you, Senator Felag, for your efforts.
Thank you. And Mr. Felag, you have a total of 3 minutes for your closing statement.
Well, thank you very much for sponsoring this event. It's been very enjoyable. It's always good to have dialogue with a friend and be able to express different views. Obviously, I'd be humble for the people out there for their vote. I've dedicated my life to being a public servant. And I always say that a public servant is one who serves the public, whereas a politician sometimes is self-serving of themselves. And being an elected official for 42 years, I believe gives me a lot of credibility, it humbles me because of the fact that people look at me as a person who can address issues. And that's what I've done. Even during this pandemic, 450 people have reached out to me via email, phone calls, or in person. I'm the type of guy that's about town all the time. I miss all the clam bakes this year. I miss all the social events because I feel it's imperative that I approach people so that they feel comfortable with me. And that's why I do door-to-door campaigning. I've done it every 2 years for 42 years, and people appreciate that. A lot of times people will say, well, what are you coming to my door for? And I say, well, I want to be able to see you face to face and be able to have you contact me whenever you have an issue. Again, it's been a difficult time during COVID to go door to door, but I've reached out to people. And I feel that's the important aspect of being an elected official, is that you make yourself accessible, be able to respond to them. Sometimes you may not agree on a particular issue, but overall they know you're trying to do the best that you can based on fact and data. Do we need anything else? And again, I make myself available to the public. So with that, I ask for your vote. I was going to say November 3rd, but now that people are voting by mail and voting now in person, I ask for your vote. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smiley and Mr. Felag, both of you. That was a very interesting and insightful discussion. And thank you both for agreeing to participate in this forum. This forum has been recorded and is available for viewing on the League of Women Voters website starting tomorrow up through Election Day. And most important for everybody in our audience, please vote. Thank you.